Hello, hello. My name is Liv Schulman. I'm going to perform a piece called Formal Economy. I come from Argentina. You can, if you want to hear it, you can move forward and sit around me, or just closer so that I get a feeling of closeness. There. So it's gonna start. If I look closer, squinting my eyes, I can see a beggar in the corner of the room, wearing a football team t-shirt and a pair of plastic bags instead of shoes. I understand this is a statement for fashion, not for poverty, obviously. His soft and muscular body made of clay. An Adonis, one could call this beggar, a beggar made of clay and black plastic bags and eggs instead of muscles. Eggs, the limit between food and sculpture, I would say. So soft that it looks like a muscle, so democratic that it creates life, and so mysterious that it rolls across the river of financial speculation. In the beginning of 1492, a beggar came with an egg to see the Queen of Castilla. The egg was there to signify the shape of the earth, which was round. That didn't come across so clear to the Queen of Castilla, who looked at the beggar with a mix of perplexity and mental disorder. For her, the earth was a flat, hard surface lying over the back of a group of elephants, standing like cheerleaders in equilibrium over the carapace of a group of turtles. But the egg was there to signify an opportunity for infinite commerce. It contained a piece of information. The beggar wanted to arrive east by traveling west. Does this sound crazy? It was. To signify his intentions, he smashed the egg against the table. And how do I know this? Because the beggar was Christopher Columbus, and because I saw this scene in a movie about his life. At the end, the man never really arrived east, since standing in his way was a whole new continent. But was that really a problem? Was a little mistake going to be an impeachment for commerce? Never. So, swimming in denial, we decided to call the place and the inhabitants of that place Indians. The egg became a symbol of the Americas, and being the Indians, victims of a very refined form of Stockholm syndrome, they worshipped the eggs and used it as a form of money before money. And since they were very fond on symbols, they found no problem in accepting imaginary regulations as regulations. Because what did we care about money? Our business was imagination. I can see the beggar has moved on now. He has abandoned me and my performance, his soft body made of plasticine. And I feel melancholic, because a beggar is, by its own nature, made of an egg. 500 years later, but in the same place, here, a small trader invented the infinite egg. This was a cylindric, long, infinite egg to be used in wrapped foods that has to be produced in industrial quantities. The infinite egg. The infinite egg is to be cut in equal slices in order to integrate elaborate foods. As you can see in this picture here, as you can see in this picture, there is the same amount of egg in all the parts of this meat roulade. It doesn't get shorter. Is that normal? It is when you have a fair society. A society that has inherited a love for eggs and social justice. And how do I call that? I call that communism. Yes. That's the infinite egg, a long, constant, cylindric egg, an opportunity for commerce, one would say, a muscle of our economy in Latin America. The infinite egg had a name. It was called Egolino. It's the mixture between ego and egg. So, when I grew up in the liberal economies of the 90s, it was decided that 1 peso would become $1. In order to back up such a phenomena, a country like mine had to hold as many dollars as pesos are in the country. That was our desire, and that was the case in 1992. What took us to create such a phenomena? Many reasons, like the fact that we suffer from low self-esteem. So in order to put up what was later called convertibility, we asked for a loan in dollars. We begged the Americans and the International Monetary Fund, and someone finally accepted. The next morning, we were all flooded with dollars in concept. That doesn't mean that our sad note bills with the faces of the conquistadores had become the green papers. But in the theory, the one was one. That meant that if a bottle of Coke costed 1 peso, I could pay it with a $1 bill. We wouldn't, but in the symbolic statement lay the beauty of the thing. And that form of abstraction marked my life. One would be one forever. So, when I see a beggar in the street, and I want to give him or her 10 pesos, I will know that I'm giving this beggar $10. That is not a mirage, it's a phenomenon called convertibility. Because in the reality, how could my poor 10 dirty pesos equal 10 shiny dollars? A little mistake. My name is Liv Ullmann. This might sound confusing or as a joke, but it's not. I was named after a Swedish actress called Liv Schulman. I'm obviously interested in things that have to do with me, like being Swedish. I love Swedish people. I look for Swedish objects, and I send letters to the Swedish embassy every month, telling them what I'm becoming and the progresses I make. So I am Liv Ullmann. I have never questioned this piece of knowledge because it came from my parents, who were big admirers of Liv's movies. Now they live in their suburban middle-class cities, and they wear Nike shoes, and it's okay, it's all forgotten. But when I was born, my parents thought that the best idea was to combine the fact that I was already going to be called Schulman to the fact that they admired Liv. So I was called Liv Ullmann, and at home it was almost as having an already famous artist under the shape of a baby. So I never questioned this piece of knowledge. The other reason I have never questioned this piece of knowledge is because it's esoteric. And what is esoteric is the knowledge that comes from within. So I wasn't going to base myself in Wikipedia if I already knew something that came from within my body. It was more than esoteric, it was my name. Who governed my body? I tried to naturalize myself as Swedish, saying I had a vast filmography. I contributed to the film market. I had been a pillar of the movies industries and a turning point in the history of drama. But in my father's surname on my birth certificate, there was a spelling mistake that made it impossible to prove that that man was my father. So my surname started looking like an invented joke. And this year, I learned that Liv Schulman is in reality a Norwegian actress. Things looked even more slightly wrong. The Swedish embassy didn't do anything to fix it. They wouldn't even answer my letters. They remained silent. I was a slightly wrong, unofficial copy of somebody else, coming from an undetermined country. How could one differentiate things if they look the same in grammar and in theory? One wasn't one anymore. What was one? A number? A person? A being? I looked at my slightly wrong clothes that was all Louis Vuitton. Louis Vuitton pants, Louis Vuitton shirt, Louis Vuitton shoes, and my clock was a Benetton. What had been formal was informal now. The Swedish embassy wouldn't understand. If one was one, official or fake, why didn't they do something to fix it? Why did they care if one thing was the other? If life was electricity? Life was energy. I came back to my imaginary dollars I had accumulated during the 90s. I knew what we were as a society. We were in Sweden. Our knowledge of what we were worth was intact. It was blurry. So one was one again. We had all these conceptual dollars that invisibly rested like a hand in our shoulders. We had the dollars. We were like the societies nowadays in which people don't use money anymore, but magnetized cards. We traded everything. Schools and factories, unemployment and deficit, debt and education, but also nails and nail polish, teeth and bread, sugar and tree leaves, bed covers and repulsion. And we only talked about sex and money. Our mental vaults were rhizomatic, all connected points of interrelated loss and exchange. And this happened in the 90s, but in many ways we were ahead of our time because wasn't money our problem? No, our problem was fantasy. We had too much of it. Our lives were based in executing a series of imaginary equivalences that started changing all the time, unable to face reality. How did we do it at our customs offices? We sent imaginary dollars out that came back under the shape of slightly wrong things that already existed in the world. Hillary Clinton and Evita Peron, and Paul McCartney, depression and anxiety, Kurt Cobain, Chloe Sevigny, dogs and motorcycles, and the Rolling Stones and Juliette Binoche came home under a slightly wrong shape of themselves. We were lazy. It was convenient. What did we care if something was well done, or just undone? Our business was desire. We were pure abstraction. Everyone did what they wanted. One day, a peso was worth $3. We were rich. And so, the morning after, 1 peso was $23. We were poor. The morning after, $1 was now 17 pesos. We were maybe even poorer. In a sprint of libertarian economy, we sold all our national industries. We looked around. Everything in the country was imported or a homemade wrong copy of something that was imported. Value was shaking. Stickers with prices started building up in shops, changing every day, every hour, every minute, every second. The world started to look padded with all these prices, just like a padded cell in a turmoil. When we went back home, we had a bag of antipsychotics instead of dollars. It was all right because it's what we wanted. Because it's by slipping into objects that desire finds its way in the material world. Spinoza's project was to enhance Spinoza's project was to enhance everyone's self-esteem by making them believe that in the word saddlebag there was no place for mistake. Pure positivity, he said, and that scream of pure positivity sounded like a do whatever you want. What Spinoza meant for real, I have no idea, since I have never read Spinoza. But in his Wikipedia article, it is ensured that Spinoza understood God. And by God, he meant the totality of the things that exist on earth, as a concept that didn't have place for negativity. So as long as there was offer, he said, there would be demand, not the opposite. So if there was offer for pain, there would be demand for pain. And if there is offer for boredom, intensity, mistake, and frustration, there would be demand for boredom, intensity, mistake, and frustration. All coming things would jump into the existent flow of offer that created its parallel and always thirsty flow of demand. So that was God, and that was my idea of international commerce. So there is Spinoza creating positivity. And all the things that existed doubled their existence for the fact that they existed in the reality and that they existed in desire. And in this orgy of positivity, a nurse heard it and stuck a needle into a patient's eye. And the patient had to sue her and the hospital for outrageous practices, and hired a group of lawyers that lingered around in the hospital corridors looking for a job. They lingered for a job opportunity, the lawyers, wearing shabby suits with their clothes in tatters. So there was work, there were offices, photocopiers, employees, secretaries. Because for Spinoza, God is direct marketing and nothing else. A marketing that doesn't need a mediator, like a fork mediates between a hand and a mouth. And what is direct marketing if not a Tupperware reunion? A perfect space for energy to circulate. A group of sad, frustrated, International Monetary Fund employees organized a collective rebellion in their dreams by becoming sleepwalkers and extending loans to all sorts of countries in ways of development. And the countries had a debt now for centuries to come. So they developed in negative. They grew and grew backwards using the dollars they had been flooded with. They produced industries and institutes of negative things, anti-self-help books and narcotic reunions, because for the job market, resistance lives in submission. And so there was the job market, there were recommendations, startup, photocopiers, precarious contract, party offices, where everyone did what they wanted. A carpet weaver used beeswax when dye failed and invented a batik. Formalist rampant. A woman walked in her bath and charged for that. The Americans took off their clothes in an act of psychosis and charged for that. A woman kissed another woman by mistake. She discovered a new sexuality for her, and with her new sexuality came new needs. And with those needs, a whole market took over. Garage churches were created by mistake, and with those churches, a perfect economy of the imaginary came. Tithes and blessings and trances and newborns were created by mistake, and the world kept spinning. The Americans sold used cars by mistake. They took off their clothes, they cut tenants, they crossed the Andes several times to put mini markets in all the posts by mistake. We all learned English by mistake. The Minister of Economics and the Minister of Education, the Minister of Health and the Minister of National Defense stood in the post becoming the new comedians waiting for a commercial opportunity, a flow of informal commerce that would rule the world as it has always ruled it, by mistake. And all this happened because for Spinoza in the background, all error was an opportunity for commerce. Not so for capitalism, that was critical and lethargic and regulated the quality of things, good and bad, official and unofficial. But Spinoza, with his goodwill, disarmed the Puritan principles. And a drug dealer heard him and sold the residue of the cocaine he was cooking. And what was a mistake at first became a commercial opportunity, a business plan for all abilities. For the ruling classes, the cocaine, and for the working classes, the crack. And sometimes it could be the other way around. Crack for the working class, crack for the ruling classes in search of experiences. For the middle classes, the cheap kitchen. And for the working classes, dust and masons. How to build a country. 1 year ago, I was walking with my mother in the little town that has absorbed her and my sister, first as immigrants and now as citizens, after the crisis with the changing prices put them out of the national turmoil. We were walking in the street and we saw a man begging at the bank's gate. He was very attractive. And knowing that the activity of begging is by nature the purest form of staging a successful business in the art of building a country, we understood that the town had grown, and now it wasn't a town anymore, it was raising a city. We had a system of elections, social security, death wish, war merchandising and injustice. Because begging is the pure essence of accepting whatever comes as a resource. So my mother took a look at the man with pride and said, now we finally gotten our own beggar. And thank you very much.